I need to tell you a story before we dig into today's topic. When I was just a child, I felt an awe of nature and the world around me, of things outside of myself. I always felt a gentle tug of something inside, understood but clearly bigger than me, and I witnessed just incredible strength of human spirit in someone I loved dearly who died of a horrible disease. And yet I saw that something keeping him strong and undefeated. It changed me and influenced me for the rest of my life. Somehow, almost from the very beginning, without direction or guidance, without training or mentoring, without even understanding what I was doing, I found myself on a spiritual journey. And I'm still on the journey, and I still don't understand it. But what I do understand is that somehow my experience relates to the simple definition of spirituality we found for the description of this episode. That spirituality is an inner path enabling a person to discover the essence of his or her being. People have always had a hunger for some understanding of who they are, why they're here, and just what is it all about. Albert Einstein said the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is its faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Well, today we're going to explore spirituality and talk about the use of hypnosis to enable you to access, in a very powerful way, the intuitive mind that Albert Einstein was talking about, to enhance your spirituality and help you develop a rich interior life. Can we really deepen our spirituality by incorporating hypnosis into our spiritual practices? Hypnosis is simply a really focused state of concentration. So what could we experience if we were to focus all our attention on universal awareness or on God to the extent that all other external stimuli would move aside? Many believe we have a special consciousness, a higher self hidden within us, capable of imparting sound wisdom, advice, and knowledge. What if we could find that part in ourselves?
The Reverend William Mitchell is going to help us out with that today. Besides being the founder of the Mitchell Institute for Professional Hypnosis and Personal Motivation, the Reverend Dr. Mitchell is a distinguished member of the National Guild of Hypnotists. Hello, Pastor Mitchell.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be your guest. Hypnosis is a natural state of focused attention in which the person becomes very open to positive suggestions. And I explain to people that we go in and out of hypnotic states every day, every night, and it's a natural state, but in a therapeutic setting, it can be a way to actually help people focus on their goals, increase their motivation, do things like create anesthesia to block pain, to be used for medical purposes, psychotherapeutic purposes, spiritual direction, and it's like any other tool. The way in which it's used obviously depends on partly the attitude of the person that is using it and the skill of the person using it, but also of the expectation of the individual coming to it. Unfortunately, as you probably know, because I know you're also an Episcopal priest, I tell all my clients when they come in the office, generally people look asleep in hypnosis, but they never feel asleep. You hear every word, you're able to respond, and your conscious mind does not leave your body. You are still able to hear and understand everything. So you may look asleep, but you're not really asleep. You just are in a state of extreme focused attention. Hypnotic trance is not unknown to the writers of the Bible. It's not unknown in spiritual circles in Christianity, as well as in other religions as well, because wherever there are people, there is hypnotism, and wherever there is hypnotism, it can be used in spiritual ways as well.
We'd love it if you would explain the 3 C's of spirituality to our listeners.
Connection, compassion, and contribution being the 3 C's of spirituality. Connection meaning moving from beyond your little isolated ego or personality into connection with something bigger, something outside of yourself. Then it talks about compassion, meaning the softening towards yourself and toward others by feeling with rather than being against yourself or against others or against the world, compassion. And then contribution being of unselfish service to others or the world. And when it comes to the pathways of spirituality through connection, he talks about connection to the soul, to the spirit, the deepest level within, and this can be beyond what is rational, logical, or even emotional. And many people find that by meditating, journaling, or just spending time alone, that helps them find this connection. The second connection he talks about is through your body. And this may come through dancing, through athletics, yoga, eating fine foods. And it's where our human bodies seem to accomplish things that seem transcendent. And another is connection to another, like intimate relationships to one another. Martin Buber calls this the I-thou relationship. And the connection to community, of course, we're very familiar with. This pathway involves one's relationship to a group, and it causes greater than oneself to contribute to the community, to that, if you've ever felt part of a family, an extended family group, a neighborhood, a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a workplace, that's the pathway we're talking about here, connection to community, beyond self. Because one of the things we have to really guard against is the narcissism of spirituality. It's not all about going inward just to yourself. It is about connecting to others as well. Connection through nature, noticing nature, being in nature, the physical environment. And, how many times have we spent times outdoors and we just feel, I believe in God, but I spell it nature, is what Frank Lloyd Wright once said. I believe in God, but only I spell it nature, was Frank Lloyd Wright. Another is connection by participating in or making or appreciating art. Many, many people through their art have a spiritual connection they feel is transcendent. And then finally, connection to the universe or a higher power, God, or cosmic consciousness, whatever word one wants to use, with the idea that there's a greater being or intelligence than ourselves at work in this life. And this connection can happen through prayer, conversion, meditation, and many other ways as well. But real quickly, that just gives a different way of looking at. Another way to talk about that is, I've always thought spirituality was the heart and the soul of religion. Religion is like the body. It's the bones, the skin, but the heart and the soul is the spirituality. You really need both. You need the body to carry the heart and the soul, but without the spirituality, without the heart and soul of religion, it becomes a dead body.
Where does that leave people who see themselves as agnostics or atheists, people that are not connected or involved with any type of religion but feel a certain spirituality? How do they make these connections? Is it possible for an atheist to be spiritual? Can you paint a picture of that spiritual person?
Oh, I think many atheists are often extremely good people who can make all kinds of spiritual connections, while intellectually they may be unable to reconcile the traditional views of God that it may have been fed as a child or maybe as an adult, that maybe were too small for them. I think there are many people who are good, moral people who are atheists who have a sense that it's more than just about being about me. It's not all about you. It's not that narcissism being totally selfish. And they have a sense of being connected to community and all these other connections I was talking about with nature. And I think that many atheists are deeply spiritual people, but for whatever reason, they feel intellectually they cannot honestly accept certain traditional religious traditions because of some contradictions they may find too difficult for them to bear. Surprisingly, in studies, a huge percent of the American population has some sort of belief in some sort of higher power, some sort of spirituality. 81% of people surveyed want their own spiritual issues integrated into any counseling, any therapy, and they have far less concern about the spiritual orientation of the professional.
In what ways would you suggest people go about creating those spiritual connections you were talking about?
If they come from a faith background that they have a good feeling about, I would start there, whether it be Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Christianity. I would start there, and I would look for the teachings that have come down through the centuries. Like we were talking about just a moment ago, there will be some teachings maybe from the ancient past that don't fit in the modern world for that particular person, but that doesn't mean you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I'd start there, and of course, obviously, each of those traditions has their own type of spirituality, including usually meditation, prayer, usually sacred scriptures, wonderful metaphors and stories, and religious practices that can help the person get into an awareness of the divine in their lives.
We feel it's really important to meet people where they are and to work with their core beliefs. We're not trying to change anybody, and all of these people have the ability to have a rich, deep spiritual life.
As you know, in psychology for years, we tried to act like we could counsel people without taking into account their spirituality and their religious affiliation or religious beliefs, and that's totally unrealistic because let's be honest, as you said, 95% of the people out there have some sort of spirituality, and so when you're working with people, it's absolutely vital that you have some awareness of what's going on there, and that's why in hypnosis it's so important to ask people, what do you know about hypnosis? How do you feel about hypnosis before you ever use hypnosis with someone? Because you wouldn't want to scare their pants off if they think hypnosis is evil.
Absolutely not. If you're just joining us now, we're talking to the Reverend Dr. William Mitchell. We have Steve on the line who wants to talk to him.
Steve, you there?
I am here. Good afternoon, Mr. Mitchell. Do you ever pray with your clients when they're under in a hypnotic state?
In working with people, if people say to me that they would like to pray in either a counseling session or a hypnosis session, I'm always glad to pray with them, but what I will do is I will ask them to say the prayer. And I do that for two reasons. One, obviously, I'm not, as Dr. Schwerenzer was saying, I'm not trying to impose my spirituality upon them ever. So I want to hear their prayer and let them pray in a way that they feel comfortable. And number two, I find that I learn so much about the person by hearing them pray. And that helps me be a better therapist with them as well. I think for any professional, if you're asked if you would pray with them, to allow them to say the prayer, not the professional, is usually a prudent way to go.
Well, let's return back to the discussion. We know that you've done extensive work with psychology of forgiveness and hypnotism. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I'm so excited about that topic because it's really moving through the traditional psychological community at an incredible pace. If you looked at the research prior to 1980 on the psychology of forgiveness, you would not find much at all. Since 1980, the amount of research dollars by huge foundations that's gone into the psychology of research has been astounding, producing numerous books, numerous research articles, and it is really forced, to quote Susan Nolan Hoeksema, who's the chair of the Yale University Psychology Department, it has forced psychologists to take seriously the role of spirituality and particularly forgiveness in the mental and physical health of clients. It is reaffirming what almost every faith tradition has known, but particularly Christianity, because more than any other faith tradition, forgiveness is at the very center of Christianity, the very center. And so it's been wonderful. An example of that is out there in California at Fuller Seminary, Lewis Smedes wrote the book, Forgive and Forget, Healing the Hurts We Don't Deserve. It's important when you're working with clients, though, to start with what forgiveness is not. It's not accepting what the person did. It's not condoning what the person did. It's not excusing. Reconciliation may not be involved. It may be a goal, like in marital therapy, but it may not be a goal, like in the case of a rape. It's not always possible. Maybe the person has died that hurt or injured the person. It's not forgetting. It's not a sign of personal weakness. It's not a sign of being willing to be hurt again. And it's usually not a single act, and it's usually not a one-time decision. And there's been lots of great research on this. One example is, I mentioned Everett Worthington at University of Virginia Commonwealth University. He has a nice acronym for forgiveness therapy called REACH, R-E-A-C-H. And if you can remember REACH, first recall the hurts, and then emotional replacement, and then altruistic gift of forgiveness, because if you really forgive someone that's hurt you, you're giving them a gift. It's an altruistic gift. They don't deserve it, but you're giving it. And then you commit to the process of continuing to forgive, and then H is to hold on. So you recall the hurt. E is you empathize with the emotional replacement. Empathize, sympathize, feel compassion for. You separate the person from the actual deed that caused the injury. For example, in Christianity, we often talk about, hate the sin but love the sinner.
Right.
Hate what they did but love the sinner. And so that's the first part: recall the hurt, and then empathize with the person, realizing that most people are doing the best they can, but for whatever reason they failed, they missed the mark. And then A, give an altruistic gift of forgiveness. C, commit to the emotional forgiveness. And then H is hold on to the forgiveness when doubts arise, because just like in grief, you might feel better one day and terrible the next day. And same thing with forgiveness. It goes up and down. It takes a period of time to really, really forgive.
Some people may be wondering why we were talking about spirituality and we switched over to talking about forgiveness, but I don't think it's possible to to really deepen that spiritual walk while you're failing to forgive, because that's such a hurtful thing to the individual. Let me change the subject a bit. I want to ask you, as a hypnotherapist, how you use hypnosis to approach spirituality and practices, how it deepens your own discernment, and just how does hypnosis play a part in developing spirituality for you?
Well, I'll tell you, one thing that really helps me with Christian clients is on my website, www.mitchellinstitute.com, and also mitchellprogram.com, Mitchell with 2 L's. I have a 4-CD set entitled Spiritual Resources for Life, and the first one is on self-esteem, where I talk about in my own faith tradition, the whole concept of grace, that we all have an intrinsic value that comes from God that no one can take away from us, that was given to us at birth by God. And then I talk about, in the second and third CDs, I actually use scriptures from the Old Testament and New Testament as hypnotic suggestions with a little bit of commentary after each one. The second one's called Trust, and it's all based on Old Testament, trusting in God. The third one's on faith, and it's talking about the New Testament scriptures, talking about faith in God. And then the last one is on forgiveness, healing forgiveness. So self-esteem, trust from the Old Testament, faith in the New Testament, and then healing and forgiveness. So when I give them those recordings, that puts a lot of Christians at ease immediately about what we're going to do. Now, age regression is a wonderful way to go back and do some forgiveness work. Future progression is just as helpful as age regression. Age regression, where you go into the future and they can look back and see how this in their life has made them a better person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can use all kinds of stories, and those can come from the Bible or from some other religious literature like the Torah or the Quran, or they can be other stories that come from other places. And there's all kinds of things you can do with life stories, themes, plots, life scripts in hypnosis. But the difference between hypnosis and traditional talk therapy is this. In hypnosis, whatever they're experiencing seems so real at that moment. Mm-hmm. And the advantage of hypnosis is you can take anything they're feeling or experiencing, and you can either amplify it, make it bigger, or you can de-amplify it, make it smaller. Right. So you can actually make the pain smaller, and you can make other things like maybe the meaning that they're receiving larger, the feeling of meaning and healing. So in hypnosis, for lack of a better phrase, it's like therapy on steroids. It speeds everything up because it's so dramatic.